Dropout. That's what my father called me the day I left Stanford University, standing in the driveway of my childhood home in Palo Alto, California, on a Tuesday morning in June. The sun bright and unforgiving, my mother crying on the front porch, my younger sister Emma watching from her upstairs bedroom window. My father looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure disgust, pure disappointment, pure anger. "You're a dropout, Maya," he said, his voice cold and final. "A failure. And as of today, you are no longer part of this family. Do you understand me? You are erased. You don't exist to us anymore." I was 20 years old. I'd just completed 2 years at Stanford University. I had a 3.9 GPA. I'd been on the dean's list both years. I was on track to graduate with honors in biology. I'd been accepted into Stanford's pre-med program. Everything was going according to the plan my parents had laid out for me since I was in elementary school, and I was walking away from all of it. Not because I was failing, not because I couldn't handle the academic work, not because I'd done something wrong or gotten in trouble, but because I'd been offered an opportunity that would change the trajectory of my entire life. An opportunity that my family would never understand. An opportunity they would see as betrayal. Let me back up. Let me tell you how we got here. Let me tell you the whole story from the beginning, because the beginning matters. My name is Dr. Maya Elena Martinez. I'm 32 years old now as I tell you this story. But the events I'm about to describe began when I was 20, 12 years ago, in the spring semester of my sophomore year at Stanford. I grew up in Palo Alto, in the heart of Silicon Valley, in a family where education wasn't just valued, it was everything. It was an identity, it was worth it. It was the single metric by which success and failure were measured. My father, Dr. Roberto Martinez, is a tenured professor of computer science at Stanford University. He's been there for 28 years. He's published over 100 papers. He's advised dozens of PhD students. He's won teaching awards. His entire identity is wrapped up in Stanford, in academia, in the prestige of being a professor at one of the most elite universities in the world. My mother, Linda Martinez, is a high school principal at one of the best public high schools in California. She spent 30 years in education. She believes deeply and completely that education is the path to everything good in life. Success, stability, respect, happiness, all of it comes through education in her worldview. I have one sibling, my younger sister Emma. She's 4 years younger than me, which means when this story begins, she was 16 years old, a junior in high school. Emma and I were close growing up despite the age gap. She was the creative one in the family, interested in literature and writing and art. I was the science kid, fascinated by how things worked, by biology and chemistry and the natural world. Our parents encouraged both of us, but there was definitely a hierarchy in their minds. My father's field was computer science, practical, lucrative, prestigious. My mother's career was in educational administration, respectable, stable, important work. Emma's interest in creative writing was tolerated but not celebrated. They'd smile and nod when she talked about wanting to be a novelist, but you could see them thinking it wasn't a real career, wasn't practical, wasn't the kind of thing that led to security and success. My interest in medicine, though, that was championed, that was celebrated, that was the golden path. Doctor, physician, someone who saves lives and makes good money and has prestige and respect. When I got into Stanford, my father was proud in a way I'd never experienced before. It was like I'd finally done something that really mattered to him. I wasn't just his daughter anymore. I was his daughter who was going to Stanford, who was following in his footsteps, who was studying at the institution where he taught. He'd bring me up in conversations with his colleagues. "This is my daughter Maya. She's a freshman at Stanford. Biology major, pre-med track. She's going to be a doctor." The pride in his voice was unmistakable. It made me feel good, made me feel like I was finally enough, finally worthy of his approval. My first year at Stanford was everything I'd been told it would be. Challenging classes, brilliant professors, driven classmates. I did well. I made the dean's list both semesters. I joined study groups. I volunteered at the hospital. I did everything a pre-med student was supposed to do. But something was missing. I couldn't quite articulate what it was, but I felt it. The hospital volunteering felt rote. I was checking boxes, following a script, doing what I was supposed to do, not what I wanted to do. My sophomore year, spring semester, everything changed. I was taking a molecular biology class, Bio 150, taught by Professor Sarah Chen. Dr. Chen was relatively young for a tenured professor, maybe 40, and she was brilliant. Her research focused on the genetic and molecular basis of neurological diseases, specifically Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. Her lectures were captivating. She didn't just teach us facts and processes. She taught us how to think like scientists, how to ask questions, how to design experiments, how to look at data and see patterns and draw conclusions. I'd never had a class that excited me like that one did. One day in March, after class had ended and most students had filed out, Professor Chen approached me. "Maya, do you have a minute?" "Of course, Professor. I've been looking at your lab reports. They are excellent. Not just technically correct, but they show real insight. You're not just following the protocol. You're thinking about why we're doing each step. You're asking questions about what the results mean. That's unusual for an undergraduate. Thank you. I really enjoy the class. Have you thought about research as a career path?" "I'm pre-med. I'm planning to apply to medical school after I graduate." "I understand that's your plan, but I want you to consider something. Based on your work in this class, I think you might be more suited to research than to clinical practice." I didn't know what to say to that. "What do you mean?" "You have a research mind. You like understanding mechanisms. You like solving puzzles. You like asking why and how. Those are research skills. Clinical medicine is different. It's about applying knowledge to help individual patients. That's important work, obviously, but it's not the same as generating new knowledge through research. I've never really thought about research as a career. Most undergraduates don't. Medical school is the default path for biology majors, but there are other paths: PhD programs, research positions, careers spent in labs asking questions and finding answers instead of in hospitals treating patients. I don't know if my family would support that. They're expecting me to be a doctor, a medical doctor. Professor Chen smiled slightly. I understand family pressure, but this is your life, Maya, not theirs. What do you want? Nobody had ever asked me that question before. Not like that, not in a way that suggested my answer mattered more than anyone else's expectations. I don't know, I said honestly. I've been on the pre-med track for so long, I'm not sure what I want anymore. Well, I'd like to offer you an opportunity to find out. I'm starting a new research project this summer, funded by a 5-year NIH grant. I'm looking for undergraduate research assistants. The position would be 20 hours a week, paid, working directly with me and my postdocs. You'd be designing experiments, running protocols, analyzing data, real research work, not just washing beakers. If you're interested, I'd like you to apply. I'd love to apply. Good. The application is on my website. It's due next Friday. Think carefully about your personal statement. I want to know why you're interested in research, not why you think I want to hear that you're interested in research. There's a difference. I applied that night. Spent hours on the personal statement, trying to articulate something I'd never put into words before. The thrill of understanding how something works. The satisfaction of seeing an experiment succeed. The curiosity that drives you to ask the next question, and the next question, and the next question, until you've peeled back layers of mystery to reveal something true. I submitted the application and tried not to think about it too much. I definitely didn't tell my parents. 2 weeks later, Professor Chen emailed me. Maya, I'd like to offer you the research position. You can start as soon as the spring semester ends. Congratulations. I accepted immediately. That summer working in Professor Chen's lab changed my life. The work was meticulous and sometimes tedious. We were studying a specific protein that appeared to play a protective role against Alzheimer's disease. My job was to run assays testing how different genetic variants of this protein functioned in cell cultures. It meant preparing cells, treating them with various compounds, harvesting them at specific time points, extracting proteins, running Western blots, analyzing data, hour after hour of careful, precise work. And I loved it. I loved the focus it required, the attention to detail, problem-solving when something doesn't work, the satisfaction when an experiment finally succeeded after multiple attempts. I'd work 8-hour days in the lab and feel energized instead of exhausted. I'd go home and read research papers about neurodegeneration until midnight and feel excited instead of bored. This was what I'd been missing. This sense of purpose, this feeling that I was part of something bigger than myself, that the work I was doing mattered, would contribute to human knowledge, might eventually help people. By the end of the summer, I'd contributed real data to Professor Chen's project. She put my name on a paper we were preparing to submit. My name. On a scientific paper, in a real journal. I was 20 years old and I was doing work that mattered. When the fall semester started and I went back to regular classes, I kept working in the lab 10 hours a week. Professor Chen started treating me less like a student and more like a junior colleague. She'd ask my opinion on experimental designs. She'd let me troubleshoot protocols when things weren't working. She'd include me in lab meetings where we discussed results and planned next steps. 3 months into the fall semester in November, Professor Chen called me into her office. It was a small space, cramped with bookshelves full of research papers and textbooks, a desk covered in data printouts and grant applications. She gestured for me to sit. "Maya, I need to talk to you about your future." "Okay." "You've been working in my lab for 6 months now. You're one of the best undergraduate researchers I've ever had. You're meticulous. You're creative. You think like a scientist. You see patterns in data that others miss. You ask good questions. You design smart experiments." "Thank you, Professor Chen. I'm not just complimenting you. I'm building to a point. I think you're making a mistake with medical school." I blinked. "What?" "Medical school would be a waste of your particular talents. You're not a clinician. You're a researcher. Everything about the way you work tells me that. You should get a PhD. You should spend your career doing what you're doing now, asking questions, designing experiments, generating new knowledge." "But I'm pre-med. I've been planning for medical school since I was 16. My whole academic path is built around that." "Plans can change. Plans should change when you discover who you really are and what you're really good at. Maya, how do you feel when you're in the lab?" I thought about that. "Good, really good. Like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing." "And how do you feel when you're volunteering at the hospital?" "Honestly, bored, like I'm going through the motions." That's your answer right there. You don't want to be a physician. You want to be a scientist. There's no shame in that. There are different paths requiring different skills and different passions. You have the skills and passion for research. My family would never support this. My father is a professor. He knows how hard it is to get faculty positions, how little postdocs make, how competitive research funding is. He'd tell me I'm throwing away a stable, lucrative career for something uncertain. Possibly. But this isn't about what your father wants. It's about your life and your career. You're the one who has to live with your choices, not him. I don't know what to do. I'm going to tell you about an opportunity, and I want you to seriously consider it. But I need you to promise you'll keep an open mind. Okay. I have a colleague at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory in New York, Dr. James Wilson. He's one of the leading neuroscientists in the world. His lab has produced groundbreaking work on memory formation and neurodegenerative diseases. He runs a very special program for exceptional undergraduate students. It's called the Undergraduate Research Program, but it's much more intensive than that name suggests. Students are selected, only 6 per year out of hundreds of applicants, to spend 3 years working full-time in world-class research labs at Cold Spring Harbor. You take graduate-level courses. You do real research. You're mentored by leading scientists. And at the end of 3 years, if you're successful, you transition directly into a top PhD program with full funding. No need to apply. No need to take the GRE. You're basically guaranteed admission. That sounds incredible. It is incredible. It's one of the most prestigious research training programs in the world. Scientists who go through this program almost always end up at top institutions. Many of them win major awards later in their careers. It's a launching pad for exceptional researchers. But I'd have to leave Stanford. Yes, you'd leave after this year. You'd start the program next summer, right after your sophomore year ends. I'd be giving up my Stanford degree. You wouldn't be giving it up. You'd be trading it for something potentially more valuable. Direct access to world-class research training at one of the best labs in the world. Maya, I wouldn't suggest this if I didn't think you were capable. But I've worked with a lot of students, and you have something special. You have the potential to make real contributions to neuroscience, but only if you follow the right path. What should I do? Apply, see if you get in. The application is due in 3 weeks. If you get accepted, then you can decide. But at least give yourself the option. Should I tell my parents? That's up to you. But if I were you, I'd wait until you know whether you're accepted. No point in having that conversation unless you have a real decision to make. I left her office in a daze. Applied to the Cold Spring Harbor Undergraduate Research Program? Leave Stanford after just 2 years? Abandon the pre-med path? My father would lose his mind. My mother would be devastated. They'd invested so much in this vision of me as a doctor. The daughter who'd followed the respectable path, who'd make them proud. And I'd be throwing it away for research? For a career path my father had explicitly warned me was unstable and difficult? But Professor Chen's question kept echoing in my head. How do you feel when you're in the lab? Good, really good. Like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'd never felt that way doing pre-med stuff. I'd never felt that way volunteering at the hospital, or shadowing physicians, or any of the things I was supposed to be excited about. The only time I felt truly engaged, truly alive, truly like myself was in the research lab. That night I started the application. The program wanted transcripts, letters of recommendation, a research statement, and a personal essay about why I wanted to pursue research as a career. I spent 2 weeks on that essay, wrote and rewrote it, tried to articulate what research meant to me, the thrill of discovery, the satisfaction of solving puzzles, the sense that you're contributing to human knowledge in a meaningful way, the understanding that research is slow and difficult and often frustrating, but that one good result, one clear answer, one step forward in understanding makes all of it worthwhile. I asked Professor Chen for a letter of recommendation. She wrote it immediately. I asked 2 other professors I'd worked with. They both agreed. I submitted the application in early December, told myself I probably wouldn't get in anyway, that I was competing against students from Harvard and MIT and Yale, students with more research experience, better credentials, stronger applications, that it was a long shot, and I shouldn't get my hopes up. 3 weeks later, right before winter break, I got an email. Subject line: Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, Undergraduate Research Program Decision. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Dear Maya, congratulations. We are thrilled to offer you a position in the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory Undergraduate Research Program, beginning in June 2013. Your application was among the strongest we have received in the 5-year history of this program. Dr. Wilson was particularly impressed by your research, statement, and your work in Professor Chen's lab. We believe you have exceptional potential as a researcher, and we're excited to help you develop that potential. The program comes with full funding, room and board on the CSHL campus, a stipend of $2,000 per month for living expenses, health insurance, and all tuition costs for the graduate courses you'll take. You'll be assigned to Dr. Wilson's lab, where you'll work on projects related to the molecular basis of memory and neurodegeneration. Please respond by January 15th to confirm your acceptance. We look forward to working with you. Sincerely, Dr. James Wilson, Director, Undergraduate Research Program, Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. I read that email 10 times, then 20 times, sitting in my dorm room, laptop open on my desk. I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing. I'd been accepted into one of the most prestigious research programs in the world. Out of hundreds of applicants, they'd chosen me. They thought I had exceptional potential. They wanted to train me as a researcher. This was real. This was happening, and I had no idea how I was going to tell my parents. I called Professor Chen. I got in. I knew you would. Congratulations, Maya. This is an incredible opportunity. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to tell my family. Tell them the truth. You've been offered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a full scholarship to train at one of the best research institutions in the world. Most parents would be thrilled. Most parents don't have my father. Your father is an academic. He understands what Cold Spring Harbor represents. He'll understand the significance of this. You don't know him. He's going to see this as me dropping out of Stanford, as me abandoning my medical career, as me throwing away everything he's worked for. Maya, you're not throwing away anything. You're choosing a different path, a path that's right for you. That's not failure. That's growth. I know that. I'm not sure he will. Do you want to accept the offer? Yes, absolutely yes. This is what I want. Then accept it. And deal with your family's reaction as it comes. But don't give up this opportunity because you're afraid of disappointing your father. You'll regret that for the rest of your life. She was right. I knew she was right. I accepted the offer that night. Sent the email confirming I'd be joining the program in June. Then I went home for winter break and waited for the right moment to tell my parents. Christmas came and went. I kept trying to find the right time to bring it up, but every time I started to say something, I lost my nerve. How do you tell your parents? Parents who've invested everything in your education, who've sacrificed and planned and dreamed about your future as a doctor, that you're walking away from all of it. Finally, in early January, a week before I had to go back to Stanford for spring semester, I knew I couldn't put it off any longer. I had to tell them. It was a Saturday morning. My parents were in the kitchen. My father was making coffee. My mother was reading the newspaper. Emma was still asleep upstairs. I stood in the doorway and said, I need to tell you something. They both looked up. I've been doing research this year in Professor Sarah Chen's lab. She studies the molecular basis of neurodegenerative diseases. I've been working on a project about protective proteins that might prevent Alzheimer's. My father nodded. That's good. Research experience looks good on medical school applications. That's the thing. I don't think I want to go to medical school anymore. The kitchen went very quiet. My mother put down her newspaper. My father set down his coffee cup. What did you just say? My father asked. I've realized I don't want to be a physician. I want to be a researcher. I want to study neuroscience. I want to understand how the brain works and why diseases like Alzheimer's happen and how we can prevent or treat them. That's what I want to do with my life. Maya, you can't be serious. You're throwing away medical school because you enjoyed working in a lab for a few months? It's been 7 months. And it's not just that I enjoyed it. It's that I'm good at it. Really good. Professor Chen says I have real potential as a researcher, and I've been offered an opportunity. What opportunity? There's a program at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. It's an intensive 3-year research training program for exceptional undergraduates. Only 6 students per year are accepted. I applied, and I was accepted. Full scholarship, stipend, health insurance, everything. It's one of the most prestigious research programs in the world. Cold Spring Harbor, my father said slowly. In New York? Yes. You're telling me you want to leave Stanford, where you have 2 years left toward a degree, to go do a research program in New York? Yes. Are you out of your mind? Dad, this is an incredible opportunity. Cold Spring Harbor is... I know what Cold Spring Harbor is, Maya. I'm an academic. I know exactly what it is, and I know that you're talking about giving up a Stanford degree and a medical career to become a research scientist. Do you have any idea what you're throwing away? I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing a different path. A different path? Maya, listen to me very carefully. I've been in academia for 25 years. I know what research careers look like. You'll spend 5 to 7 years getting a PhD, making poverty wages, maybe $30,000 a year if you're lucky. Then you'll do a postdoc, maybe 2 postdocs, making barely more than that. That's another 4 to 6 years. Then you'll fight for faculty positions that barely exist anymore, because universities are cutting tenure-track lines. And if you're lucky enough to get a position, you'll spend half your time writing grants begging for money instead of doing research. That's the reality. That's what you're signing up for. I know it's hard, but it's what I want to do. What you want. Maya, you're 20 years old. You don't know what you want. You're in love with the idea of research because it's new and exciting, and one professor told you you're good at it. That's not a basis for throwing away your entire future. My mother spoke up, her voice shaking. Maya, honey, we've been planning for you to be a doctor since you were in high school. You've always wanted to be a doctor. Why are you changing your mind now? I didn't really want to be a doctor, Mom. You and Dad wanted me to be a doctor. I went along with it because it seemed like the right path. But it's not my path. Not your path? Maya, you're pre-med. You've taken all the prereq courses. You've volunteered at the hospital. You're on track to take the MCAT next year. Everything is planned out. I don't want that plan anymore. I want this. I want Cold Spring Harbor. I want research. My father stood up from the table. He was angry now. Really angry. Let me make something very clear to you, Maya. If you do this, if you leave Stanford to go to this program, you're making the biggest mistake of your life, and I will not support it. Do you understand me? I will not support this decision. I'm not asking for your support. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. You're asking for my support whether you realize it or not. Who do you think pays for your phone? Your car insurance? Your health insurance? Your credit card? All of that comes from me. And if you make this choice, all of that stops. The program provides health insurance and a stipend. You can what? Live on $2,000 a month in New York City? Do you know what rent costs there? What food costs? You'll be broke within 6 months. I'll manage. No, you won't. Because you're a 20-year-old who's never had to worry about money because your parents have always taken care of everything. You have no idea what you're signing up for. Then I'll learn. I'll figure it out. Why are you doing this? Why are you throwing your life away? I'm not throwing my life away. I'm pursuing something I'm passionate about. Something I'm good at. Why can't you see that? What I see is my daughter making a terrible decision based on emotions instead of logic. What I see is you giving up a stable, prestigious, lucrative career for something uncertain and difficult. What I see is you disappointing everyone who's invested in your success. That hurt more than anything else he'd said. Disappointing you, you mean? Yes, you're disappointing me. You're disappointing your mother. You're throwing away everything we've worked to give you. Everything you've worked to give me, or everything you wanted from me. Those aren't the same thing, Dad. Don't you dare be ungrateful. We've given you every opportunity. The best schools, the best education, everything you could possibly need to succeed. And this is how you repay us? I'm not trying to repay you or hurt you. I'm trying to live my own life. This isn't your own life. This is you being selfish and short-sighted and throwing away your future. My mother is crying now. Roberto, maybe we should... No, Linda, she needs to hear this. Maya, I'm going to say this one more time. If you leave Stanford, if you go to this program, you're making a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life. You're giving up a Stanford degree. You're giving up medical school. You're giving up financial security. And you're giving up your family. I stared at him. What does that mean? It means if you make this choice, you're choosing that program over us, over your family, and we won't be here when you realize you were wrong. We won't bail you out when you're broke and struggling. We won't support a decision we fundamentally disagree with. You're disowning me? I'm refusing to make a terrible decision. If you want to throw your life away, you do it on your own. You don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to reject everything we've planned for you and still expect us to support you. Dad, I'm done discussing this. You have until June to change your mind, to come to your senses and realize that staying at Stanford and going to medical school is the right path. But if you get on that plane to New York, if you leave for that program, you're leaving this family too. Am I clear? Crystal clear. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, went upstairs to my childhood bedroom, closed the door, and cried. Emma came to my room an hour later, knocked softly and came in without waiting for an answer. Maya, I heard what happened. How much did you hear? Enough. I heard Dad say he's disowning you if you leave Stanford. Apparently pursuing my own career path is enough to get erased from this family. She sat on the bed next to me. Are you really going to do it? Leave Stanford for this research program? Yes. Even though Dad said he'll cut you off? Yes. Why? Why is this so important to you? I thought about how to explain it. Have you ever done something that just felt right? Like completely right? Where you knew deep in your bones that this was what you were supposed to be doing? Yeah, writing. When I'm writing, everything else fades away. It's the only time I feel completely like myself. That's how I feel in the lab. That's how I feel doing research. Not in pre-med classes. Not volunteering at the hospital. Not doing any of the things Mom and Dad want me to do. Only in the research lab. And this program is a chance to do that full-time. To train with the best scientists in the world. To actually contribute to human knowledge. I can't turn that down. Even if it costs me my family. It won't cost you your family. Dad's just angry. He'll cool down. I don't think he will. You didn't see his face, Em. He meant what he said. And Mom didn't defend me. She just cried and let him say all of it. She's scared. She doesn't understand why you're doing this. Neither does Dad. They think you're throwing away something stable for something uncertain. I am. But that's what following your passion looks like sometimes. It's uncertain. It's scary. But it's real. And I'd rather do something real that might fail than spend my life doing something I don't love, just because it's safe. You're braver than me. I could never stand up to Dad like that. You will, when the time comes, when you're ready to fight for your writing. Will you call me? From New York? Even if Dad won't talk to you? Of course. You're my sister. That doesn't change just because I'm leaving. We hugged. She left, and I sat in my childhood bedroom, looking at the posters on the walls, the books on the shelves, all the markers of who I'd been. Tomorrow I'd go back to Stanford for spring semester. In June I'd leave for New York, and I'd probably never be welcome in this house again. Spring semester was surreal. I went through the motions of my classes while knowing I'd be leaving before graduation. I kept working in Professor Chen's lab. I didn't tell anyone except a few close friends about my decision. Most people at Stanford didn't know I was planning to leave. In May, I officially withdrew from Stanford University. 2 years completed. 2 years to go to earn a degree, and I was walking away. My father refused to sign the forms. My mother had to do it, crying the whole time. The day I left for New York was the day my father called me a dropout. I'd packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases and a backpack. I'd arranged for storage for the things I couldn't take. I'd said goodbye to Stanford, to California, to the life I'd been building there. My mother drove me to the airport. She cried the whole way. My father refused to come, wouldn't even say goodbye. At the curb outside departures, my mother hugged me. I don't understand why you're doing this, Maya. But you're my daughter. I love you. Please call me when you get to New York. Let me know you're safe. I will, Mom. I love you. I got on the plane, flew to New York, started a new life at 20 years old with $800 in my bank account, 2 suitcases, and a scholarship to one of the best research programs in the world. The next 3 years were the hardest of my life, and the best Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory is located on Long Island, about an hour from Manhattan. It's a beautiful campus right on the water, historic buildings mixed with modern research facilities. Some of the most important discoveries in molecular biology happened there. Watson and Crick worked on DNA structure there. Barbara McClintock discovered jumping genes there. Scientists who work at CSHL regularly win Nobel Prizes. It's hallowed ground for researchers. The undergraduate research program housed us in dormitories on campus. 6 students, ranging in age from 19 to 21. All of us had left undergraduate programs at elite universities: Harvard, Yale, MIT, Stanford, Princeton. All of us had been told we had exceptional potential. All of us were terrified and excited in equal measure. My assigned research project was in Dr. James Wilson's lab, studying the molecular mechanisms of memory formation and loss. Specifically, we were trying to understand why some people developed early-onset Alzheimer's disease, while others with similar genetic risk factors didn't. What was protecting some people? What could we learn from those protective mechanisms? My specific project focused on a protein called APOE, which comes in several variants. Some variants are associated with higher Alzheimer's risk. Others seem protective, but nobody really understood why at the molecular level. I spent the first 6 months just learning techniques: how to culture neurons, how to extract and quantify proteins, how to run Western blots and immunofluorescence assays, how to design experiments properly with appropriate controls, how to analyze data, how to read and critically evaluate research papers. It was like drinking from a fire hose. So much information, so many new skills, so many things I didn't know. I worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week. Wake up at 6 a.m., get to the lab by 7, work until 7 p.m., grab dinner, do coursework until midnight, collapse into bed, repeat. It was exhausting, but it was exactly what I wanted. By the end of my first year in the program, I'd contributed real data to Dr. Wilson's project. I'd run experiments that made it into a paper. My name appeared in the acknowledgment section. It was a small thing, but it mattered. I was doing real science, making real contributions. Year 2 was when things got interesting. I'd been working on characterizing how different APOE variants affected neuronal health in cell culture. I'd noticed something unexpected. Cells with one particular variant produced significantly more of a specific protective protein than cells with other variants. This was interesting. Nobody had reported this connection before. I spent months confirming it, running the same experiment over and over to make sure it wasn't a fluke, testing different cell lines, trying different conditions, and every time the result held. This APOE variant led to increased production of this protective protein. That was potentially huge, because if we understood how that variant was increasing production of the protective protein, maybe we could develop drugs that did the same thing. Maybe we could protect people from Alzheimer's regardless of which APOE variant they had. Dr. Wilson was excited when I showed him the data. Maya, this is really good work. You found something that nobody else has reported. We need to figure out the mechanism. How is this APOE variant affecting expression of this protein? That became my focus for the next 18 months. I designed experiments to understand the pathway. I worked with the lab's postdocs. I learned new techniques. I failed constantly. Experiments that didn't work. Hypotheses that proved wrong. Months of work that led to dead ends. But slowly, gradually, I pieced together an answer. The protective APOE variant was activating a specific genetic pathway that increased production of the protective protein, and I found that this pathway could be enhanced with a small molecule compound. In cell culture, treating neurons with this compound prevented the toxic protein buildup that causes Alzheimer's symptoms. By the end of my 3rd year in the program, I'd made discoveries that Dr. Wilson said were PhD-level work. We wrote a paper together, my name as second author, Dr. Wilson as senior author. We submitted it to Nature Neuroscience, one of the top journals in the field. It was accepted. At 23 years old, I'd published real research in a major scientific journal, and I'd been accepted into the PhD program in neuroscience at Cold Spring Harbor, with full funding for the next 5 years. I was officially Dr. Maya Martinez now, not yet, but soon. PhD candidate Maya Martinez. During those 3 years, I had almost no contact with my parents. I tried calling them once, about 6 months after I'd left. My mother answered. Maya, is that you? Hi, Mom. I just wanted to let you know I'm okay. The program is incredible. I'm learning so much. The research I'm doing is... Maya, your father doesn't want you to call here. The words were like a slap. What? You made your choice. You chose that program over your family, and your father feels that we need to respect that choice by not maintaining contact. Mom, I didn't choose the program over you. I chose a different career path. I still love you. You're still my family. But you're not living your life as part of this family. You rejected everything we wanted for you. You rejected the path we'd laid out. Your father sees that as rejecting us. That's not what happened. I just wanted to study research instead of medicine. How is that rejecting you? I don't know how to explain it, Maya. I just know that your father is hurt. Deeply hurt. He feels like you threw his advice back in his face, like you didn't trust him to know what was best for you. It wasn't about trust. It was about choosing my own path. I understand that. I do. But your father doesn't. And he's asked me not to communicate with you. I'm sorry, Maya. I wish things were different, but you need to respect his decision. So that's it? I'm just erased from the family? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that right now, your father isn't ready to have a relationship with you. Maybe someday that will change. But for now, please don't call here. It just makes things harder. Mom. But she'd already hung up. I sat in my small apartment on the CSHL campus, phone in my hand, and realized they'd really meant it. I was erased. I tried emailing Emma. She responded, but her messages were short and infrequent. She was in high school, living at home, under our parents' roof and rules. She couldn't maintain a real relationship with me without defying them. And she was 16. I couldn't ask her to do that. So I stopped trying. Stopped reaching out. Stopped hoping they'd change their minds. And I built a new life. I made friends in the program. Other researchers who understood the all-consuming nature of scientific work. I found mentors. Dr. Wilson, other principal investigators at CSHL, postdocs who took me under their wing. I created a chosen family of people who valued the same things I did, who understood why I'd made the choice I made, who celebrated my successes and supported me through failures, and I threw myself into my work. If I couldn't have my biological family's approval, I'd earn the respect of the scientific community instead. My PhD research expanded on the work I'd started in the undergraduate program. I was trying to develop the small molecule compound I'd discovered into an actual treatment. It was ambitious, ridiculously ambitious for a dissertation project. My PhD committee told me I was probably aiming too high, but Dr. Wilson supported me. Maya, if you're going to fail, fail spectacularly while attempting something important. Better than succeeding at something safe and boring. So I pushed forward, spent 4 years optimizing the compound, testing it in increasingly complex models, moving from cell cultures to brain slices to live mice. It was exhausting work, experiments that took months to complete, data that had to be analyzed carefully, papers to read, hypotheses to test, failures to overcome. But gradually, slowly, I saw progress. In mouse models of Alzheimer's, my compound reduced toxic protein buildup. It improved memory performance. It prevented neurodegeneration. It was working. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to be significant. Enough to be real. I published my findings in Nature Neuroscience again, this time as first author. The paper got attention. Lots of attention. Researchers around the world started citing my work. Pharmaceutical companies reached out asking about licensing the compound. Science journalists wrote articles about potential new Alzheimer's treatments. At 27 years old, I was being invited to present my research at international conferences. My name was becoming known in the field. My PhD committee said my dissertation was one of the strongest they'd seen in years. I defended my dissertation in May, 2 months before my 28th birthday. The defense lasted 2 hours. I presented my research to my committee and a room full of faculty and graduate students, answered their questions, defended my conclusions, explained my methodology. At the end, my committee deliberated for 15 minutes, then called me back in. Congratulations, Dr. Martinez. You've passed with distinction. Dr. Martinez. Not Maya, not Ms. Martinez. Dr. Martinez, I'd done it. 8 years after leaving Stanford, 3 years in the undergraduate program, 5 years in the PhD program, I'd earned my doctorate in neuroscience. Without my family's support, without their approval, without their presence, I'd done it entirely on my own. My chosen family was there for the defense. Dr. Wilson, who'd mentored me for 8 years. Dr. Chen, who'd flown out from Stanford to attend. Postdocs and grad students I'd worked with. Friends I'd made at CSHL. They threw me a party afterward. Champagne and congratulations and hugs and celebration. It was wonderful. But there was a hollow space where my biological family should have been. I wondered if they knew. If my father had heard through academic networks that his daughter had gotten her PhD. If my mother had Googled my name and seen the papers I'd published. If Emma, who was 20 now, a junior at Berkeley studying creative writing, ever thought about her older sister who'd been erased from the family. I didn't reach out to tell them. They'd made it clear they didn't want contact, so I let them remain ignorant of what I'd accomplished. After graduation, I had job offers. Multiple postdoc positions at top institutions. I chose Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, working with a team that was trying to translate basic neuroscience research into clinical treatments. It was the perfect next step, taking the discoveries I'd made and figuring out how to turn them into actual therapies that could help patients. The work was exciting and challenging. We were designing clinical trial protocols, working with physicians, trying to bridge the gap between laboratory science and medical practice. 2 years into my postdoc, when I was 30 years old, something extraordinary happened. I was awarded a major research grant. The National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, part of the National Institutes of Health, announced that I'd received a 5-year, $2.5 million grant to continue my research on protective mechanisms against Alzheimer's disease. It was called a Pathway to Independence Award, designed for exceptional early career scientists who were ready to start their own independent research programs. Getting this grant meant I could start my own lab. I could become a principal investigator. I could hire my own team. I could direct my own research agenda. At 30 years old, 2 years out of my PhD, I'd achieved what some scientists spend decades working toward. The announcement made waves in the scientific community. It was covered in Nature and Science, the 2 most prestigious scientific journals. The NIH press office put out a release highlighting me as an example of a promising young investigator. My inbox flooded with congratulations from colleagues, collaborators, other researchers I'd met at conferences. Dr. Wilson called me. "Maya, this is incredible. I'm so proud of you. This grant is going to launch your career. You're going to do amazing things." "I learned from the best," I told him. "You gave me a chance when I was 20 years old. You believed in me when nobody else did. You've more than justified that belief. Now go build your lab, hire smart people, do great work, change the world." I accepted a faculty position at Mass General, contingent on the grant. I started planning my lab, began recruiting graduate students and postdocs. My life was coming together in ways I'd never imagined possible, and my family still had no idea any of this was happening. Or so I thought. 3 months after the grant was announced, I got an email that changed everything. From Emma Martinez. Subject, "I'm sorry." The email was long. I'll share the important parts. "Maya, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you want to hear from me after 10 years of silence, but I needed to reach out. I'm graduating from Stanford in 2 months with my MFA in creative writing. Mom and Dad are planning a big celebration. Family, friends, faculty. It's going to be a whole thing. And sitting here thinking about my graduation, I realized that you never got to have that. You never got to have Mom and Dad celebrate your achievements. You never got recognition from the family for everything you've accomplished, because they don't even know what you've accomplished. I was too young to understand what happened when you left. I was 16. I believed what Mom and Dad told me, that you'd made a huge mistake, that you'd dropped out of Stanford, that you'd thrown your life away. I believed that for years. I'm ashamed to admit how long I believed it. But a few months ago, I was at a writing conference and someone mentioned your research. They were talking about promising young neuroscientists, and they mentioned Dr. Maya Martinez's work on Alzheimer's protective mechanisms. I didn't even realize they were talking about you at first. Then they mentioned Cold Spring Harbor and I put it together. I looked you up. Maya, I had no idea. I had no idea what you'd accomplished. PhD in neuroscience, multiple papers in top journals, a $2.5 million NIH grant, running your own lab, doing work that could actually help millions of people. You're exactly what Mom and Dad always said they wanted us to be. Someone doing important work, making real contributions. But they have no idea because they cut you off. I don't know if Mom and Dad know about your career. They've never mentioned you. Not once in 10 years. It's like you never existed. I've gone along with that because it was easier. Because I was scared to defy them. Because I was a coward. I'm sorry, Maya. I'm so sorry I didn't fight for you. I'm sorry I let them erase you. I'm sorry I didn't stay in touch. You deserve better from your little sister. I'm writing because I want to invite you to my graduation. I know that's a huge ask. I know you probably never want to set foot on Stanford's campus again. I know you probably hate our family. But I'm asking anyway. Come to my graduation. Not for Mom and Dad, for me, for us. And selfishly, I want them to see you. I want them to confront what they've been denying for 10 years. I want them to see who you've become. Will you come? I'll understand if you say no. I'll understand if you never want to see any of us again. But I'm hoping you'll say yes. Love, Emma. I read that email 5 times. Emma wanted me at her graduation at Stanford, where my father still worked as a professor, where I'd left as a 20-year-old dropout 10 years ago. She wanted me there to force our parents to confront the reality of what I'd accomplished. Part of me wanted to say no. I'd built a life without them. Did I really want to walk back into that world? Did I really want to subject myself to my father's judgment, my mother's disappointment? But another part of me, the vindictive part, the part that wanted recognition, the part that had been hurt by their rejection, that part wanted to go. Wanted to show up and watch them realize they'd been wrong. Wanted them to see Dr. Maya Martinez, principal investigator, NIH grant recipient, published researcher. Wanted them to face what they'd thrown away when they erased me. I sat with the email for 3 days, thought about it constantly, talked it through with friends and mentors. Finally, I responded, Emma, thank you for reaching out. Thank you for looking me up and for understanding what I've been doing with my life. I'm glad you're graduating with your MFA. I'm proud of you for pursuing your writing. I know Mom and Dad weren't supportive of that path. I'll come to your graduation. Not for them, for you. You're my sister and I never stopped loving you, even when we lost contact. Send me the details. I'll be there. Love, Maya. 2 weeks later, I bought a plane ticket to San Francisco. Stanford's graduate school graduation was May 15th, a Saturday. I flew out Friday night, stayed in a hotel near campus, didn't tell anyone I was coming except Emma. Saturday morning, I woke up early, put on a professional black dress and the academic hood I'd earned from Cold Spring Harbor. Dark blue silk with gold trim, the colors of their program. I wasn't planning to wear it to the ceremony, but Emma had asked me to bring it. The graduation ceremony was at 2 p.m. in Stanford Stadium. It was a beautiful day. Sunny, warm, clear California sky. Families were streaming into the stadium. Graduates in their caps and gowns. Excited chatter everywhere. I found a seat in the family section toward the back. Tried to be inconspicuous. I could see my parents in the front row. My father's hair was grayer than I remembered. My mother looked older. 10 years had passed. We'd all aged. They had no idea I was there. The ceremony started. The usual graduation program. Speeches from the university president, from the graduate school dean, from distinguished faculty. Then they began conferring degrees by department. When they got to the School of Humanities and Sciences, Emma walked across the stage in her cap and gown, the hood of her MFA bright against the black fabric. My parents stood and cheered. My father took pictures. My mother was crying happy tears. They were proud of her. As they should be. Emma had accomplished something significant. After all the degrees had been conferred, after the official ceremony was supposed to be over, the dean of the graduate school, a woman named Dr. Patricia Hendricks, took the podium again. Before we conclude today's ceremony, she said, I'd like to take a moment to recognize some extraordinary achievements by our alumni. My heart started pounding. This wasn't in the printed program, what was happening. Emma had arranged something. I could feel it. Stanford graduates go on to do remarkable things in all fields, Dr. Hendricks continued. Today, I want to highlight one alumna whose work in scientific research is making a significant impact on human health. The stadium went quiet. Parents and graduates are paying attention. Dr. Maya Elena Martinez attended Stanford for 2 years as an undergraduate, biology major before transferring to a specialized research program at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory in New York. She went on to earn her PhD in neuroscience with distinction and is now a principal, investigator at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, where she runs her own laboratory focused on neurodegenerative diseases. People in the crowd were murmuring now, looking around, trying to figure out who she was talking about. My parents had gone absolutely still, frozen in their seats. Dr. Martinez's research focuses on the genetic and molecular mechanisms underlying Alzheimer's disease, the dean continued. Her work has been published in top-tier scientific journals, including Nature Neuroscience. She's given keynote addresses at international conferences, and this year, at just 30 years old, she was awarded a 5-year, $2.5 million grant from the National Institutes of Health to continue her groundbreaking research developing potential treatments for Alzheimer's and related dementias. The crowd erupted in applause, loud enthusiastic applause from thousands of people. Dr. Martinez is here today celebrating her sister's graduation, Dr. Hendricks said, smiling. Maya, would you please stand so we can recognize your extraordinary achievements on behalf of Stanford University? Emma had arranged all of this. She'd contacted the dean's office. She'd told them I'd be attending. She'd made sure this moment would happen. I stood slowly, put on my Cold Spring Harbor academic hood so people could see I'd earned my doctorate. Every head in the stadium turned toward me. Thousands of eyes. The applause got louder. Students were standing now, cheering. Faculty were clapping. And my parents were staring at me like I was a ghost, like I'd risen from the dead. My father's mouth was slightly open. My mother's hand was over her mouth. They looked shocked, devastated, confused. Dr. Martinez, the dean said, her voice carrying across the stadium. Although you completed your undergraduate education elsewhere, Stanford is proud to claim you as an alumna. Your work represents the highest ideals of scientific research: curiosity, rigor, dedication, and the pursuit of knowledge that can alleviate human suffering. On behalf of Stanford University, we congratulate you and thank you for your contributions to science. More applause. I nodded, acknowledging it. Then I sat back down. But I could feel eyes on me still. Whispers spreading through the crowd. Did you know she went here? Only 2 years and then she transferred? That research sounds incredible. A $2.5 million grant at 30? My father had turned around in his seat. He was looking back at me. Our eyes met across the stadium. I didn't look away, just held his gaze. Let him see me. Let him process. The ceremony concluded shortly after. Graduates threw their caps in the air. Families surged forward to congratulate their children. I stayed in my seat, uncertain what to do. Emma found me within minutes, pushed through the crowd still wearing her cap and gown, threw her arms around me. You came. You actually came. Of course I came. I told you I would. Congratulations on your MFA. Did you know I'd arranged that? With the dean? I suspected when she started talking about Cold Spring Harbor. Mom and Dad saw you. They know you're here. She trailed off, looked over her shoulder. They're coming over here. I turned. My parents were walking toward us through the crowd of celebrating families. My father looked like he'd aged 20 years in the past 10 minutes. My mother was crying. They stopped a few feet away from me. Neither of them seemed to know what to say. The silence stretched out, awkward and painful. Finally, my mother spoke. Maya, is it really you? Hi, Mom. You're here. You came to Emma's graduation. Emma invited me. I came for her. My father was staring at me like he was trying to reconcile the 20-year-old daughter he'd disowned with the 30-year-old woman standing in front of him. The dean said you have a PhD. Yes. I defended my dissertation 4 years ago. I'm Dr. Martinez now. From Cold Spring Harbor? Yes. She said you're a principal investigator. At Mass General? Yes, I run my own lab there. We're working on translating basic neuroscience research into potential clinical treatments. And you got a $2.5 million grant from NIH? Yes, it was awarded 3 months ago. It's funding my research program for the next 5 years. My father looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. Why didn't you tell us? Any of this? You told me not to contact you. You disowned me. You said I was erased from the family, so I lived my life without you, built my career without you, accomplished everything I've accomplished without your support or your knowledge. But you've been doing all this research, publishing papers, getting major grants, and you never thought to tell us? Why would I? You made it clear 10 years ago that you didn't support my choices, that you considered me a dropout and a failure, that I was no longer part of this family. So I took you at your word. I built a life without you, and clearly I did just fine. My mother was crying harder now. Maya, we thought, your father said you'd thrown your life away. He said you'd made the biggest mistake of your life. We thought you were struggling. We thought you'd failed. I haven't struggled. I haven't failed. I've succeeded at exactly what I set out to do. I became a research scientist. I made discoveries. I'm helping advance human knowledge. I'm doing meaningful work that might actually help people someday. Everything I told you I wanted to do, I did. Without your approval. Without your support. Without you. Maya, we made a mistake, my father said, his voice strained. What I said to you 10 years ago, calling you a dropout, disowning you, I was wrong. I was so wrong. I'd waited 10 years to hear those words, and now that he was saying them, I felt nothing. Just emptiness. Yes, you were wrong. Can we talk? Somewhere private? Your mother and I would like to explain. Explain what? How do you decide your 20-year-old daughter was a failure for choosing research over medicine? How you erased me from the family for a decade? How have you never once tried to reach out? Never once tried to find out if I was okay? Never once tried to learn what I was actually doing with my life? What exactly do you want to explain, Dad? We thought we were doing what was best for you. We thought you were making a mistake. And when did you realize you were wrong? When the dean just announced my accomplishments to thousands of people? When you learned I have a PhD and a major research grant and a successful career? Is that when you suddenly decided maybe I wasn't a failure after all? Or did you maybe realize it sometime in the past 10 years and just never bother to reach out? He didn't have an answer for that. Emma touched my arm gently. Maya, maybe you guys should find somewhere quiet to talk. This isn't the place. Emma, I love you. I'm so proud of you and your MFA and your writing, but I'm not here to reconcile with them. I'm here for you. That's all. I came to your graduation because you're my sister and I love you. But them? I looked at my parents. I don't owe you anything. Not an explanation. Not a reconciliation. Not a relationship. You made your choice 10 years ago. You have to live with it. Just like I've had to live with being erased from my own family. Maya, please, my mother said. We're your parents. We love you. We've always loved you. You have a funny way of showing love. Disowning your daughter and refusing all contact for 10 years because she chose a different career path than the one you wanted? That's love? We were wrong. We're sorry. Can't we move past this? Move past it? Mom, you don't just move past 10 years. You don't just apologize for a decade of rejection and expect everything to be fine. You made a choice. You chose Dad's pride over your daughter. You chose his vision of my life over my actual life. You chose to believe I was a failure rather than believing in me. Those were your choices. And I've lived with the consequences. Now you get to live with them too. I turned to Emma. Congratulations again. I'm so proud of you. Call me anytime. I mean that. You have my number now. Use it. I hugged her. Then I turned and walked away through the crowd of graduates and families. Behind me, I heard my mother call my name. I didn't turn around. I walked out of Stanford Stadium, got in my rental car, drove back to my hotel, flew back to Boston the next morning, went back to my lab, went back to my life, the life I'd built without them, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Relief. Not satisfaction exactly. Not vindication, though there was some of that. Just relief. Relief that they finally knew the truth. Relief that I'd stood up for myself. Relief that I hadn't collapsed or forgiven them, or pretended that 10 years of rejection didn't matter. I stood firm. I'd told them exactly how I felt. And I'd walked away. That felt right. That felt like closure, even if it wasn't reconciliation. 2 weeks after graduation, I got an email from my father. Subject line: I'm sorry. I almost deleted it without reading it. But curiosity won out. The email was long. I'll summarize the key parts. Maya, I've spent the past 2 weeks in therapy. Individual therapy that I probably should have started 10 years ago. I've spent those sessions trying to understand how I could have been so catastrophically wrong about you and your choices. My therapist asked me why I reacted the way I did when you told us about Cold Spring Harbor, why I called you a dropout, why I disowned you. I told her it was because I was trying to protect you, because I knew how hard research careers are, because I wanted better for you. She asked me if that was really it, or if maybe I was angry that you didn't value my opinion, that you didn't trust my judgment about what was best for you, that you were choosing your own path instead of the path I'd laid out. And she was right. I was angry. I felt rejected. You're a professor, I thought. You understand how academia works. You should trust my assessment that medical school was the better choice. The fact that you didn't trust me felt like a rejection of everything I am. So I rejected you back. I told myself you were making a mistake. I convinced your mother that we needed to let you fail so you'd learn your lesson. I erased you from the family because it was easier than admitting I might be wrong. Maya, you weren't making a mistake. You were following your passion. You were choosing a path that was right for you, and you were absolutely right to do that. Everything you've accomplished proves it. You've had an extraordinary career. You've made real discoveries. You're doing work that matters. You've succeeded beyond what most scientists achieve in their entire lives. And you did all of it without me, without my support, without my guidance, without my approval. You didn't need me, and maybe that's what hurt the most. That you were right and I was wrong. That you succeeded without me. That you proved you didn't need my permission to live your own life. I'm sorry, Maya. I'm sorry for calling you a dropout. I'm sorry for disowning you. I'm sorry for the 10 years I missed. I'm sorry for not being the father you deserved. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to want a relationship with me. But I needed you to know that I was wrong. Completely, utterly, catastrophically wrong. And I'm sorry. Dad, I read that email 3 times. And despite everything, despite the 10 years of rejection, despite all the hurt, I felt something soften in me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. I responded, Dad, thank you for the apology. It took courage to write that. I appreciate you acknowledging that you were wrong. I don't know what kind of relationship we can have going forward. 10 years is a long time. I'm a different person than I was at 20, and you're a different person than the father I remember. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we can build something new, something honest, something based on who we actually are instead of who you wanted me to be. I'm not ready for regular contact yet. I'm not ready to pretend the past 10 years didn't happen, but I'm willing to try. Slowly, carefully. We'll see where it goes. Maya, that was the beginning of a slow, careful reconciliation. My father and I started emailing once a month. Brief messages about my research, his teaching, neutral topics that didn't require us to confront all the painful history. My mother and I talked on the phone occasionally. Awkward conversations where we both tried to bridge a decade of silence and hurt. Emma became our connection point. She'd update me on family news. She'd tell them about my work. She'd slowly, patiently rebuild the bridge that had been burned. 6 months after Emma's graduation, I published another major paper. This one was in Cell, one of the 3 most prestigious scientific journals in the world. The paper detailed a proposed clinical trial design for testing my Alzheimer's treatment in human patients. It outlined how we could safely move from mouse models to people. The response was overwhelming. The paper was covered by major media outlets. The New York Times wrote a feature article about me and my research. NPR's Science Friday did a segment. My university's press office was flooded with interview requests. Suddenly, I wasn't just a researcher publishing papers. I was a public face of Alzheimer's research, a representative of young scientists doing important work. It was exciting and terrifying in equal measure. My parents saw all the coverage. My father sent me an email the day the New York Times article came out. Maya, I read the Times article about your research. The journalist called you one of the most promising young neuroscientists in the country. I printed it out. I brought it to my department meeting. I showed it to everyone. I told them, that's my daughter, Dr. Maya Martinez. That's my daughter. I know I have no right to be proud of you. I lost that right 10 years ago when I called you a dropout and erased you from the family. But I am proud. I'm so incredibly, overwhelmingly proud of you. And I'm so deeply sorry that I wasn't there for any of it. That I missed 10 years of your life. That I wasn't there to celebrate your successes or support you through your struggles. I can't get those years back. All I can do is be here now. If you'll let me. I love you, Maya. I'm sorry it took me so long to say that. Dad. That email made me cry. Not sad tears. Something more complicated. Relief, maybe. Grief for what we'd lost. Hope for what we might rebuild. 1 year after Emma's graduation, my family came to visit me in Boston. All 3 of them. My parents and Emma. It was strange having them in my apartment, in my life, in my city after so long. We went to dinner at a restaurant near my apartment in Cambridge. The conversation was stilted at first. Too many years of hurt, too much history, but Emma kept things moving, asking questions, telling stories, bridging the uncomfortable silences. At one point, my mother said, "Can we see your lab? Where do you work? I'd like to understand what you do, really understand it." "You want to see my lab?" "Yes, very much. I've read your papers, or I've tried to. Though I don't understand half the technical language. But I want to see where you work, see what you do every day. Understand this career you chose." The next day, I brought them to Massachusetts General Hospital, gave them a tour of my lab space, showed them the equipment we used, microscopes, cell culture hoods, freezers full of samples, computers for data analysis. Introduced them to my team, 2 graduate students, 1 postdoc, a lab manager. Explained my research in terms they could understand, walking them through how we were trying to develop treatments for Alzheimer's. My father asked intelligent questions. He was a computer scientist, not a biologist, but he understood research methodology, understood the challenges of experimental design, understood what it meant to work for years on a single problem. My mother mostly watched me explain my work. I watched the way my face lit up when I talked about recent data. I watched the way my team members interacted with me, respectfully but warmly, clearly liking me as a mentor and colleague. Watched me be competent and confident in my own space. Afterward, in the parking lot, she hugged me tightly. I understand now. Understand what? Why did you leave Stanford? Why did you choose this path? You love it. You really, truly love this work. I can see it in your face when you talk about it, in the way your whole body lights up. You were right to choose this. And I'm so sorry I didn't see that 10 years ago. It's okay, Mom. It's not okay. I let your father convince me you were making a mistake. I let him convince me to cut contact with you. I chose his anger over my relationship with my daughter. That's not okay. But I'm grateful you're giving me a chance to make it right. I'm glad you came to visit. I'm glad you wanted to see my lab. I'm proud of you, Maya. Not just for your research, though that's extraordinary, but for having the courage to follow your own path even when everyone told you it was wrong. That takes real strength. And I'm sorry I didn't support that strength when it mattered most. That visit marked a turning point. We weren't back to being a close family. We'd probably never be what we were before. But we were building something new, something more honest, something based on who we actually were rather than who they'd wanted me to be. 2 years after Emma's graduation, when I was 32, I was invited to give the keynote address at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference in Chicago. It's the biggest conference in the Alzheimer's research field. Thousands of researchers, clinicians, and advocates attend. Being invited to give a keynote at 32 was a huge honor. Most keynote speakers are senior scientists with decades of experience. My parents asked if they could attend, if they could hear me speak. I said yes. The conference was in July. My keynote was scheduled for the second day at 9 a.m. in the main ballroom. When I arrived that morning, the ballroom was packed. Over 3,000 people. Researchers I'd admired my whole career. Principal investigators from major institutions. Pharmaceutical company executives. Patient advocates. Media. And somewhere in that crowd, my parents. I stood at the podium wearing a professional suit, looking out at thousands of faces, and talked about my research for 45 minutes. I explained the protective genetic mechanisms I'd identified, the molecular pathways we were targeting, the potential treatments we were developing, the clinical trials we were planning, the hope that we could someday prevent or delay Alzheimer's in high-risk populations. I showed data, explained methods, answered questions, made them laugh a few times with stories of experiments gone wrong. The audience was engaged, taking notes, asking smart questions. When I finished, they gave me a standing ovation. Over 3,000 people standing and applauding for work I'd done, for discoveries I'd made, for contributions I'd offered to a field trying to solve one of medicine's hardest problems. I walked off the stage and found my parents waiting in the hallway. My father had tears streaming down his face. My mother was openly crying. My father hugged me tightly, something he hadn't done since I was a child. Maya, that was extraordinary. You were extraordinary. I've never been more proud of anyone in my entire life. Thanks, Dad. I mean it. Watching you up there, commanding that room, explaining research that could change millions of lives, answering questions from the top scientists in the world. I've never been more proud. And I've never been more ashamed of myself. Dad, no, let me say this. 10 years ago, I called you a dropout. I told you were throwing your life away. I told you you'd made the biggest mistake of your life, and I was wrong about everything. This is what you were meant to do. This work, this contribution, this life, I see that now. I wish I'd seen it then. I wish I'd supported you. I wish I'd been there for all of it. Your PhD defense, your first publication, your grant award, all the moments I missed. But I wasn't, and that's my greatest regret. Not that you left Stanford, not that you chose research, but I wasn't there to support you when you needed me. You're here now, I said. That's what matters. Is it enough? It's a start. My mother hugged me next. Your father is right. We're so proud of you, not just for your accomplishments, though those are incredible, but for being brave enough to choose your own path, for trusting yourself even when we didn't trust you, for building this extraordinary career despite us, not because of us. You did this, Maya, all of it. On your own. That's remarkable. I wasn't entirely on my own. I had mentors. Dr. Chen, Dr. Wilson. Other people believed in me. But you didn't have your parents. You should have had your parents. I'm sorry we weren't there. I'm sorry I let Roberto convince me to cut contact. I should have been better. I should have been the mother you deserved. You're here now. That's what matters. 3 years after Emma's graduation, I got another major grant. This one was even bigger than the first. $4.2 million over 5 years from the National Institute on Aging to conduct human clinical trials of my Alzheimer's treatment. We were actually going to test whether my compound could help people, real patients. Real lives potentially changed by work that started in a lab when I was 20 years old. The grant made national news. Alzheimer's affects millions of families. A new potential treatment was huge news. I did dozens of interviews, appeared on morning shows, explained my research to audiences who didn't have scientific backgrounds. My parents watched all of it, told everyone they knew, showed up at my university when there was a press conference, stood in the back of the room watching me field questions from journalists. Afterward, my father approached me. Can I tell you something? Of course. When I was your age, I'd just gotten tenure at Stanford. I thought that was the pinnacle of my career. I thought I'd made it, but watching you today, watching you talk about research that could actually help millions of people, I realized something. What? I've spent my career teaching students and publishing papers that maybe a few dozen people will ever read. That's valuable work. I'm proud of it. But it's not what you're doing. You're changing the world, Maya. You're making discoveries that will outlive both of us. That will help people decades from now. That's extraordinary. And I'm sorry I ever tried to steer you away from this. I'm sorry I couldn't see what you were capable of. I'm sorry I measured success by my own standards instead of recognizing that you were meant for something different, something better. Your work matters too, Dad. You've taught thousands of students, shaped hundreds of careers. That's important. Maybe. But it's not the same as what you're doing. And I'm grateful that you didn't listen to me, that you followed your own path. Because look what you've built. Look what you've accomplished. The world is better because you didn't listen to me. 4 years after Emma's graduation, my relationship with my family had transformed. We talked regularly. My parents came to visit every few months. Emma and I were genuinely close again. She'd published her first novel, and I'd gone to her book launch party, cheering louder than anyone. We'd never be what we were before. The 10 years of separation had changed us all too much. But we'd built something new, something more honest, something based on mutual respect rather than parental authority, something that acknowledged the past without being defined by it. Last month, I spoke at Stanford, not at graduation, at a faculty panel about non-traditional career paths in science. The university had invited me specifically to talk about my experience leaving Stanford and succeeding anyway. My father was in the audience. When I finished my talk during the Q&A session, a student raised her hand. Dr. Martinez, you mentioned that your family didn't support your decision to leave Stanford. Can you talk about that? About how you dealt with family pressure to follow a different path? I looked out at the audience, saw my father sitting in the third row watching me carefully. My father is actually here today, I said. So this might get uncomfortable. The audience laughed nervously. My father smiled slightly. When I told my parents I was leaving Stanford to join a research program, they thought I was making a huge mistake. My father is a professor. He understood academia. He thought he knew what was best for my career, and he strongly disagreed with my choice. He told me I was a dropout. He told me I was throwing my life away. He cut off contact with me for 10 years, and in some ways that rejection was the hardest thing I've ever experienced. But in other ways, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. People were listening intently now, because it forced me to stop seeking external validation. It forced me to trust myself. It forced me to build confidence from internal sources. From my own assessment of my abilities, my own passion for the work, my own vision of what I wanted to achieve. I couldn't rely on my parents' approval anymore, so I had to learn to approve of myself. And that's a skill every scientist needs. Because there will be times in your career when nobody believes in your ideas. When grant reviewers reject your proposals. When papers get rejected. When experiments fail. When people tell you you're wrong or you're wasting your time. If you need external validation to keep going, you won't survive those moments. But if you've learned to trust yourself, to believe in your own judgment, to keep working even when nobody else understands, that's when you can do your best work. I paused. Looked at my father. My relationship with my family has improved significantly in the past few years. They've come to understand and support my choices, but I'm grateful that I had to learn to make those choices without their support. It made me stronger, more independent, more confident. So if you're facing family pressure to follow a different path, if people you love don't understand or support your choices, know that you can succeed anyway. It won't be easy. It will hurt, but you can do it, and you'll be stronger for it. After the panel, my father approached me. That was a generous way to frame what I did to you. It was honest. You did hurt me, but you also inadvertently taught me something valuable. I wish I could have taught you that lesson without causing so much pain. Me too, but we can't change the past. We can only move forward. I'm grateful you're letting me move forward with you, that you gave me a second chance. Not every parent gets that after what I did. Not every parent apologizes and genuinely tries to change. You did, that matters. Today, I'm 35 years old. I've been running my research lab for 5 years. We have 20 people now. Graduate students, postdocs, lab technicians, a lab manager. We're conducting the first human clinical trials of my Alzheimer's treatment. Early results are promising. Patients receiving my compound show slower cognitive decline than those receiving a placebo. We might actually be able to help people. That's what it was all for. All the years of training. All the failed experiments. All the sacrifices. It was for this possibility, that the work I do in a lab could translate into real help for real patients with a devastating disease. My relationship with my family isn't perfect. There are still moments of tension, still echoes of old hurts, still times when my father says something that reveals he still doesn't fully understand my choices. But we're trying. And that's more than we had for 10 years. Yesterday, I got an email from a student at Stanford, a sophomore biology major who'd heard about my story. She wrote, "Dr. Martinez, I heard you speak at the faculty panel last month. You talked about leaving Stanford to pursue research training, about your family calling you a dropout, about choosing your own path even when nobody supported you. I'm writing because I'm in a similar situation. I'm pre-med, but I don't want to be a doctor. I want to do research. And my parents don't understand. They think I'm throwing away a stable career for something uncertain. They think I'm making a huge mistake. Your story gives me hope. Hope that I can follow my own path even if they don't approve. Hope that I can succeed on my own terms. Thank you for sharing your journey. It matters more than you know. Can I come to your office hours? I'd love to talk about research careers and how you made your decision." I responded immediately. "Come to my office hours Tuesday at 2 p.m. I'll help you figure out your path. And know this, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Your life is yours to build. Trust yourself. You've got this. Dr. Martinez." Because that's what I learned through all of this. Choosing yourself, following your passion, building the life you actually want instead of the life others expect. That's not dropping out. That's not failure. That's courage. My family called me a dropout. They erased me from their lives. They refused to acknowledge my accomplishments for a decade. But that didn't stop me from becoming exactly who I wanted to be. I built a career I love. I made discoveries that matter. I'm doing work that might actually help millions of people someday. Not despite their rejection. Because I learned to validate myself. When I stood at Emma's graduation and the dean announced my grant, every head turned. But not to Emma, to me. The dropout, the failure, the daughter who'd been erased. Except I wasn't any of those things. I was Dr. Maya Martinez, principal investigator, researcher, scientist. I was exactly who I'd always meant to be. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about choosing yourself, following your passion, and building a life on your own terms, even when everyone doubts you. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching. And remember, you deserve to trust yourself.